Hello, everyone, and welcome to Into the Mythica, Wisdom and Secrets from Our Primordial Past. For the Into the Mythica conference, we are bringing together a diverse and visionary collective of speakers who will offer their expertise and guide us to open up our most ancient stories, these treasure troves, the mythologies and cosmologies from the past, so that we can explore, honor, reawaken, and remember who we truly are at this extremely powerful time on our beautiful sacred planet. And my name is Jocelyn Starfeather. I will be your host, and I am the creator of this event. And I am thrilled and honored today to be here with Keone Hanalei. Welcome, Keone.
Aloha.
So wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Mahalo. So happy to be here and to share with all of you.
Wonderful. So let me introduce you to everyone, Keone. Keone is a descendant of the Mu people, the inhabitants of the northwestern Hawaiian Islands before the migration of the Polynesians. His maternal grandfather's line spans 1,017 generations. A vast majority of what Keone knows regarding plant medicine and distillation comes from this direct lineage. His grandmother and female elders taught him the trade of plant extraction. Most of the methods that he resources in medicine making remains loyal to these practices. Medicinals, including the oils, tinctures, hydrosols, and essences and essentials, are gathered and honored in ceremony and thus extracted in small batches over a period of time, loyal to distinct moon phases, which places a botanical's specific house of power. This is the old way and ensures a plant transfers its life force or mana into product form. Wow, that is just so beautiful. I just want to pause and ask you about that, but we'll get to that. So Keone's maternal grandmother was a well-known healer on the island of Maui. Keone was fortunate to become adopted by her upon birth and spent the first 5 years of his life immersed in ancient practice and mysticism. He is just one of only a handful of practitioners who have access to and are willing to share this ancient archaic knowledge, or pre-flood Ike, Ike being the word for knowledge. Fern Medicine, or emotional intelligence, is one aspect of this Ike and dominates what he expresses today. This is the legacy of his lineage. Fern Medicine is the awareness of the movement of emotions and the release from control fixation. Keone is also versed in ancient primal meditative and movement practices, such as Ulu, which incite cellular memory, DNA activation, and the comprehension of familial and lineal wisdom through the reading of the nervous system and the DNA. So Keone, your wonderful topic for today is the primary experiments of the 4 original lineages of Mu. And I can't wait to dive into this with you. And so I think it's so beautiful and so fascinating that you are deeply connected with your lineage, and 1,017 generations. Wow, that's just incredible. So could you share with us a little bit about that to begin?
Yes, mahalo. Thank you so much, Jocelyn. It's an honor really to have this access to the memory and the knowledge of my lineage. And, my family preserved it because in Hawaii, we didn't have a written language until maybe about 200 years ago or so. So everything was preserved in chant. And our lineage is preserved in what we call the Oli Mo'okuauhau, or the Lineal Chant. Now, the Lineal Chant really just encompasses one thing, and that's the name of each generation, because in our culture, our name holds our kiakahi, or our purpose. So just our name itself tells the story of who we are and also what we have accomplished. So we also have the succession of knowing what our lineage has been successful and victorious in. And so our mo'okuauhau, our Oli Mo'okuauhau, goes back to 18,000 BC, which is 20,000 years ago, by what we call the founder of our contemporary lineage, Mahat. Now I say contemporary lineage, and when we think about 20,000 years, it's like, wow, how is that contemporary?
That's a vast contemporary range.
Yeah, but it's because, of course, the lineage, like all of our lineages, go far beyond 20,000 years ago. What this tells us, at least in my family, is that Mahat in 18,000 BC resurrected the lineage because the lineage finally entered this phase of recovery, where we were not simply responding to sheer survival. We now had the ability to become creative, innovative, expressive. So perhaps at the time of 18,000 BC and before that, there was a cataclysm, and a lot of our brothers and our sisters were in a place of sheer survival up until that point. So we don't know what happened beyond that, but in like today's conversation with the 4 primary lineages of Mu, we can get an understanding of what happened in the genesis of the experience of the human event.
Okay, wow, beautiful, beautiful. So what are those 4 lineages?
Yes. So first, I want to share this about the lineages, because all the lineages are held in experiments. The lineages govern a specific experiment. So before I go into these different experiments, I want to just touch on the primary experiment. The primary experiment to which all of us, if we are human beings, if we have DNA, if we are organic, that we are a part of. And that is what is called Aloha Ma. Aloha Ma. And, I share this a lot in my communities, and just in the Hawaiian culture, this is very prevalent. Aloha Ma means self-reflective love. Now, there's something that seems to be a great distortion in this culture, and that's separation. And the trauma of separation, what we call first trauma, separation. And so the primary experiment is to reconcile that. And we do that by way of Aloha Ma, self-reflective love, to consolidate that separation within the self. Now, this all began, and this is according to the Mu doctrines, this all began because what we call source, or Kameānana Ihana, okay, the nucleus, is comprised of love. It's love. However, there is a spark of intelligence, and Kameānana Ihana, that nucleus, felt and thought and believed that I not just want to exist as love, I want to give and receive love as well. And therefore, Kameānana Ihana separated itself from itself so that it can love itself, so that love can become self-reflective. And thus was birthed the primary experiment. And then that was fractured into different experiments in order to consolidate all of these experiments and accomplish the Aloha Ma. So was that like comprehensive, my sister?
Yes, thank you. And this is so, it's really enlightening to think about this, that we all come from love, and yet love wanted to experience giving and receiving that love, right? And so this leads into our current experience of reality.
Yes, and we can also see that love, that this separation is not malicious. It was necessary, and it is necessary for us to experience that Aloha Ma, that self-reflective love, so that we can give and receive love as well. So this fear and this first trauma of separation is not malicious at all. It has great purpose. Now, there are 4 primary lineages that each hold a very specific experiment. Now, the first, and I'm going to start by how we perceive them in a linear way, okay? The first is from the star system of Draco, what we call Mataroro, and these are the Mo'okiha, or the reptilians. Now, the experiment of the Mo'okiha of Draco is that of time. Now, and that's why they're the first, and we believe them to be the most archaic, is because they themselves had created time and the perception of time. Now, of course, because they have created time, they also govern the experiment of death. And I believe that's why, especially in pop culture, this lineage gets such a bad reputation.
Interesting. Yes.
It's funny because I say it like this: you just make one blockbuster film and you completely just like annihilate an entire lineage.
Wow.
The perception of a lineage, right?
Wow, yes. But
Yes.
this is very confronting for us, right? Time and death, and like this is what we are kind of fighting against the most in our reality.
Yes, that's so true. And it's one of the greatest fears is time and death. And they also govern something known as ritual. Now, the Mo'okiha, the reptilian lineage, is governed in the element of air because they're all governed in elements, in air, okay? And it's the kingdom of the reptiles, the birds, and the amphibians. Now, the second lineage, it comes from Sirius, and that's the A'a, or the A'ena, the shining ones. And this is the kingdom of the dolphins and the whales. And when we feel into dolphins and whales, what is something that just comes up naturally? Well, what do dolphins and whales represent?
Water in the oceans.
Yes, yes. So it's the element of water, and then also sonar,
Oh,
their frequency. And so they represent the experiment of communication, and memory, which is really important. Now, the third, and this is the lineage, the third is actually the lineage that my family comes from. It's our pico, or it's our nucleus of our lineage, and that's of Matari'i, or the Pleiades. And the Pleiades, known as the Mea'uli, or the blue beings, and this is the kingdom of plants. And it's the experiment of the materials, of matter, and of gravity. So now we're really getting into the formation of things. This lineage also greatly governs medicine and medicine making, which, I come from a long line of that. And, I like to put it this way: when people approach me and they say, oh, I would love to, see where my lineage or my DNA aligns. And I say, well, what has been something that's been consistent in your family from generation to generation, as far as professions, as far as symbols, as far as names? Just that alone, you can really begin to pinpoint which one of these lineages that your family may be from. Now, the fourth is kind of a very mystical lineage. This is from Arcturus, and it's called the Hokulea. And these are the Ahivela, or the flame people. Now, this is the element of fire, and this is the kingdom of the spirits and the demigods. Now, when we feel into the element of fire and the flame people, this has a lot to do with explosions. Now, when we feel into explosions, because it's best to really feel into this poetically. When we feel into explosions, what are some things that come up in this energy of explosions?
well, volcanoes would be one.
Yeah, definitely. And, it has a lot to do with activations. Activations. And one of the greatest activations that we know in this phenomenal world is quantum leaps. And that's why this lineage is very mysterious and mystical. It governs quantum leaps. It governs activations. It governs adrenalines and the impetus for new things to become birthed. And there we have it. Those are the 4 lineages. My sister?
Wow. So I'm wondering if we're not from Hawaii, right? If we don't know of a Hawaiian lineage, do we still belong to one of these lineages? Is everybody in the world descended from these, or are these particular to the region of Hawaii?
Well, I like to put it like how my grandmother, Kauiki Onalani, and the elders said it. If you have DNA, if you're organic, you're mu, because it's a primary civilization. It's a primary people. And so my answer to that would be yes, most certainly. And like I was saying too, you can simply observe different traditions in your family that can align you to one of these lineages.
Okay. Okay. Beautiful. I think I identify with the fire ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, this is so powerful. Thank you for sharing this. And so where are we in this experimental process then? And what have we learned from these primary experiments?
Right. And that's like the $1,000,000 question, right? Is that I feel like many people aren't having these discussions. So we aren't enlivening these experiments. And we can even look at the Draco lineage at the Mataroro, and we can see that there are lineages that are being completely rejected. Their experiments are shamed, are put into obscurity because for whatever reason. And then we can also see that some of the other lineages, such as the A'aena or the Shining Ones, those from Sirius, are becoming glamorized. They're being placed in a fantasy. And so those are also unrealistic. So we're not having honest conversations about these experiments. If we're not having honest conversations about these experiments, then we really don't know the primary experiment, which is Aloha Ma, self-reflective love. There's a lot of dissociation happening in the world today.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think in our world today, we are so caught in, maybe it's best expressed as the shadow side of that original split, right? Because we are just, there's so many things happening right now where this group is at odds with that group, and we're arguing over things that really we should be coming together about. So what do you recommend from your lineage? How can we approach this? How can we do better?
Well, I like to always take it back to the pico, or like the nucleus of it all, which is for many of us to give ourselves permission to realize that this phenomenal animate world and every which experiment that we experience throughout the day, we are not victimized by it. Right? We have the saying in the ancient language, in Mu language, "Hanabku alo me'e," and that means the victim has collapsed, the hero is present. And just like we see Kameanani Ihana, source, nucleus, made a choice. It's a choice. That's why we live in free will. Made a choice to separate itself from itself so that it can love itself. Everything to which we experience today, we're not victimized by it. It's a possibility and an opportunity to reconcile the fabric of love. And my kupuna would always say, this is a world without error.
Yeah, so we can really trust the journey that we're each on. We can trust the journey that we're on collectively, that this is all being carried out for a reason. And I think we feel that in our hearts, when we really fully connect in, when we're in our deep meditation or a deep prayer, we can feel that we need to all be in this together. We need to go through this challenging time right now. But it's difficult, right? We can get drawn off track by a lot of things at this time.
Yeah. Well, yes. And, I personally feel that many of us get off track because many of us don't feel safe. And that's the big picture here. That's the big problem, is many feel unsafe. And so there's a lot of reaction, and there's a lot of suspicion, and there's a lot of defense, and it only leads to hostility. And so I always love to remind myself that I'm safe. If I take myself back to that pico where Kameanana Ihana, source, decided to separate itself so that we can all experience the phenomenal world to which we experience today, and in all the bumps and all the debris and everything to which is occurring right now, that it is not malicious, that it is purposeful, that we are safe to be present and to experience it at all, because we can go back to the Mataroro, to the Draco lineage, and they say, this is fleeting. In the creation of time, there will be a completion. It's the ritual of death. It's not dangerous. It's not malicious. It's so that we can excel and exalt. It's not to be punished. Death is not a punishment. It's an exaltation.
Right. Yes, and so this is something that we see across all of the ancient cultures, right? All of the ancient civilizations, this idea of death, not as an ending, not as a punishment, but as an exaltation, as an incredible journey that we're going on to see what is next, right? It's like a door, a portal into the next reality. So it seems like we have a lot to learn from the Draco beings.
Yes.
Draco experienced or experiment, right? Maybe
Yes.
that's where we need to actually spend the most time and
Yeah.
learn.
And opportune word, time. Yes.
Yes.
And it's like personally for me in like my studies of awareness of where I am right now in life, Draco lineage, the Mataroro are coming in very strong. And so I have been exploring this lineage. I'm from the Matari'i or the Pleiades lineage, but this Mataroro seems really important right now. And, you know, feel it this way. The first lineage is the perception of time, okay, and the linear. So this is where we really are introduced into a project, into a goal, right? There's a trajectory. And then in the fourth lineage, it is a quantum leap. It is an activation. And an activation could be our own hala or our own transition, our own exaltation. Because when we do go into the ritual of death, we do also experience the lineage of hokulea and that quantum leap into that to which cannot be perceived right now.
Right, absolutely. So I noticed that you said we need to really feel into these. So how can we do that? How can we, you know, I feel like we need to really integrate these, take them in, embody them in some way. What do you recommend around this, around really connecting with these 4 lineages?
I love it. Yeah, definitely embodiment is so incredibly important. That's why we have form. That's why we're in material form, is so that we can feel, so things can land, and thus they can be expressed. And they're expressed in the way to which we translate that to which we feel by the way of structures to which we build. And, you know, structures are very poetic too. When we look at a rose, we know that the rose is creating a structure around its translation of source, of God, of Kameānana Ihana. It has accomplished its translation of what that energy is to it. Now, if we really pause and just feel into the structure that a collective humanity is creating right now in patriarchy, we know that that structure is called war. Now, is war really our translation of God? Wow. Right? So a correction does need to be made, and that needs to be made on an individual basis. And yes, we can look at the 4 lineages, knowing that we don't need to belong and be restricted to one. We can see how we dance, ebb and flow in each one, how these experiments are relevant, important, or perhaps not honored in our life. If we want to feel into like the whole human or a human in right relation, right? What is my relationship to my memories? What is my relationship to the plant kingdom? What is my relationship to activations? What is my relationship to time? And it can begin with very simple questions like that. And when I took myself through this questionnaire, I realized that there are certain places where I was rejecting. There are certain places where I was glamorizing and embellishing. You know, anytime we embellish something, we take it out of its authenticity and into deception. And I like to point that out because deception is not always malicious, right? It's not always with the intent to harm or to hurt someone. And this is where, you know, when we go into the realms of fantasy, many of us don't realize that we're actually being incredibly deceptive.
Yes, that's so important. That's so important to know. And yeah, that we can work with each of these individually. And then as I feel like as we come more into integration, more into understanding of that, more into embodiment, we're going to ripple that out into the collective, right? And it creates a larger healing, as with any kind of healing work that we do. But this is a really powerful basis to create as the foundation for that.
Yes, yes. And our Syrian lineage teaches us about this when they talk about sonar and how we're radiating, right? What's our aura? How are we making contributions? Is it a place of authenticity, or is it from a place of deception and dissociation? And so really allowing ourselves to just be in the experience of the self, right? And to be able to observe. And the only way that I can observe what's happening within me and around me is if I feel safe. It's always going to come back to safety. Because if I don't feel safe, I'm more interested in protecting and defending myself from suspects, when ultimately the number one suspect is going to be the self. Now, that is the highest point, or the apex of dissociation, is when we can't even be face to face with ourselves. In the language, in Hawaiian and in Mu, aloha, okay, just aloha itself means face to face. What is my ability? And we have the different pillars of aloha too, which is one, am I face to face with the natural world? Am I face to face, meaning am I grounded? Am I grounded? Am I face to face with my brothers and my sisters? Can I witness? Can I witness, or am I too arrogant, right? I have to mandate people to feel and be a certain way. So am I face to face with my brothers and my sisters? And then the most important, am I face to face with myself? Can I accept that this is my form right now? Can I accept that this is my placement right now?
So I will just share, I think that the serious beings are here with us because my little nephew just came in, and I think he's taking a shower. So apologize for the background noise, and I think the water beings are speaking to us as well. Yes. And now this concept of fear, this is something we're all really working with in the world at this time. There's so much fear. Now it's interesting because I have traveled and I go to places, like I go to Egypt, and they're not afraid there, right? So I know there's these pockets that are not in fear, but a lot of pockets of the world are in fear right now with the pandemic and with multiple other things going on. So how can we work with this as well? And I know from talking to you before, Keone, that this is an aspect of our feminine, this very creative aspect of ourselves, this visionary aspect of ourselves. She has to feel safe in order to do that creative visionary work. So how can we work with this? How can we strengthen our feminine's feeling of safety so that we can really build create the new world that we know is possible, so that we can live into this, embody it in every way?
Yeah, yes. And thank you for speaking into our energetic feminine, because our energetic feminine certainly does govern safety. Because, so the other word for safety is faith. Unfortunately, in today's culture, faith has taken on a new definition, which means subordination. Because so many experience faith through different dogmas and religions that teach just that, a subordination. However, faith really means my knowing. My knowing. We're all experiencing something right now, which is pretty wild, and that's called amnesia. Amnesia. It's faith which takes us back to our blueprint, our memory of, why am I here? Why am I here? Once I understand and know, I'm aware of why I'm here, now I can begin to produce, to accomplish my purpose, my kiakahi. That's the faith. And within our faith, we know we're safe, because I'm no longer relying on others to determine my experience for me. And that's really what happens in cultures where many don't feel safe, is that we allow others to dictate and determine our experience through the vast ways to which that happens. So once I can determine my faith, be held in my faith, I can begin to resurrect the safety within my feminine. Now, when we go and resurrect from the feminine, we go into the masculine spaces where we can begin to become the engineers and to build those structures. And those structures and the building of the structures are always geared to share and sharing and contributions and service to all beings.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And you know, we're feeling so strongly the need to return to this. And this is really what this conference is all about, right? Into the Mythica, remembering our past so that we can remember who we really are and live that into the future. So yeah, thank you for all that you're sharing here that is helping to enlighten and inform us about that. And now, what about the masculine then? Is there anything more you would want to say about the masculine and strengthening that masculine within us as well?
Yes, yes. I feel just like contemporary, like just today, I will speak for today. I feel like one of the greatest things we can gift our energetic masculine, remember, regardless of what gender we are 100% masculine, 100% feminine. One of the greatest gifts we can gift our masculine today is confidence. In patriarchy, the masculine's not confident. The masculine's arrogant. Arrogant is very isolating. To gift my masculine confidence to say we can make contributions, we can do no harm. We can build structures that aren't going to harm others, that are going to be a service to myself and others. And it's not about being superior. It's not about being inferior. It's about being sufficient. My masculine's sufficient. Don't need to be inferior or superior. I am sufficient. That's clean, honest confidence. And
there's great humility in that kind of confidence, I feel. Like
yeah.
The humility and the confidence must be together for us to be in right relationship with that masculine part.
Most certainly, because this really eradicates one of the greatest ingredients of war, which is competition. You know, when it's no longer about being inferior or superior, when the confidence is no longer in that arrogance, then competition is no longer as interesting. What's more interesting is sharing, is making contributions.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Let's do more of that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I want to ask you about Fern Medicine, but before we move into that, is there anything else you would want to say about these 4 original lineages or the primary experiment or the 4 experiment?
Yeah, I would love to simplify it because, you know, when I talk about these lineages, oftentimes it's like a month-long series, right? Just covering all of these, and we just touched in the surface. So to simplify it, I would invite everyone to just locate within your realm. Okay, and you can do this poetically. You can do this practically too, if you want. But locate in your realm where fire, water, air, and earth. Where are those placements in your life? How are those relevant or irrelevant in your life? So just begin to feel into that. The realm of water. How is that important to me today? The realm of air, the realm of fire, the realm of earth. Knowing that it's best not to play favorites. And I really want to drive that home too, because yes, I come from a lineage that is governed in the kingdom of earth, of plants. But that doesn't mean that I play favorites with that over water, fire, air. So just begin to observe where these elements, how they alchemize in your life right now.
Beautiful. And I think, you know, really sensing into maybe the one that feels most difficult for us, or we don't feel its presence as much, to go toward that, right? To really open up to experiencing that. more.
Yes. Yes. Whatever there's aversion to, I say go into it.
Right.
And of course, first and foremost, determine your safety so that as you go into these places of aversion, we're not getting ready for battle, right? We're not looking for suspects and monsters that don't exist, right? That's the exterior volume making decisions for us. I said no to that a long time ago. My life has changed since then.
Yes. Oh. So yes, well, I would love next for you to share with us a bit about Fern Medicine. There are some Fern tinctures that I've been working with from you, and they are just extremely powerful and just so alive. They just have their own life force and personality, each one. So share with us about this medicine lineage that you carry, whatever feels most important for people to know.
Mahalo. Thank you, Jocelyn. You know, when I shared about Mahat and the founder of our contemporary lineage, Mahat has a story of this medicine. It's called Pu'a Ehu Ehu, Fern Medicine. And Mahat really resurrected this medicine and kept it preserved through our lineage up until me. And Fern Medicine correlates to emotional intelligence. Now, there are 103 native Hawaiian ferns that correlate to 103 human emotions. So these specific ferns in their spores hold the codes to different human emotions. This is pretty important because a lot of the emotions to which we experience today may not be very honest. Right. And I mean, I'll take it back to that word aversion. There's a lot of emotions that we're in straight up aversion to. And then there's other emotions to which there's a lot of craving. And then we begin to embellish and have expectations of those emotions. I'll use an example. One of the emotions that are in aversion today is grief. However, I had a conversation with grief with this fern called Palai Hina Hina. And Palai Hina Hina asked me, right, said, okay, what is your perception of grief? I want to know. And I said, okay, it's loss. It's loss. And Palai Hina Hina said, no, I am not about loss. I'm about completions. I'm about completions. Now grief becomes more friendly. I'm less in aversion to it. Now let's go to the other spectrum. We have this fern called makali'i, and it's the fern of euphoria. Now this is one of the emotions that there's craving, right? There's expectation, there's a sense of control. I want to control it to make it stay, right? So it's become corrupted. So I had a conversation with euphoria, and euphoria, makali'i asked me, what is your perception? And I said, to check out, to just check out, you know, to live in la la land. Like I don't have to be present. Everything's so hard. And Makali said, no, I'm about contentment. If you're content, you're euphoric. It's very simple. So notice how a lot of these emotional codes are surfacing at this time and correcting themselves in our field so that we can now experience the truth and the honesty of that emotion rather than these false perceptions.
I love the examples you gave. It's really powerful to think about that, bringing them, it's like bringing these emotions back to their center, not this far out version of it, this other far out version of it, which we do get into or try to create or try to run from in so many ways.
Yes, yes. And, you know, I just want to share really briefly too, because this question comes up a lot, is that why are ferns? Mm-hmm. Well, how come ferns hold the human emotion? Well, ferns are very unique on our planet because it's the only species that we know of, okay, that have achieved evolutionary stasis. Evolutionary stasis means something is no longer required to evolve. It's completely evolved. That's very significant. You know, the fossil of a fern 180 million years ago is identical to the fern growing today. It is, especially even when we observe crystals and stones, that have gone through magmatic changes to accommodate the shifts, but ferns haven't. And that's why we know that they're in homeostasis. Now, because something is in homeostasis, evolutionary stasis, this means it no longer is required to accumulate data. And like Jocelyn, what is one of the reasons why we become so confused and so distorted and so influenced in improper ways is because we're accumulating so much data.
We are such accumulators of data these days.
Yes, it's saturated, right? And we're all confused. I'm like, wait, is that my belief or that person's belief? Right? And then it takes us back to feminine and faith. It's like, is this my faith or is this the noise coming at me? Am I just imitating someone else's truth and faith, or is it really mine? And so ferns don't need to deal with that because they don't accumulate data. Everything to which they hold is in 100% conviction, certainty. So ferns, at the time of the Kali Yuga, when we came into the Kali Yuga or the spiritual dark age, there's a concern that the human emotion is perhaps on a collective level, a kiakahi, a purpose. The human emotion is potent, right? The energy, the electricity created by the emotion has the power to create and collapse a universe. Yeah, so there is a concern. We must preserve the emotion. And ferns volunteered. Fern said,
They're kind of them.
right, yeah, 5. Fern said, we no longer accumulate data. Therefore, a Kali Yuga cannot corrupt us. Wow. It will not infiltrate us. We are going to observe the Kali Yuga. We will not be influenced by it. And so they held all this time the codes of the uncorrupt human emotion until the time is, as we say in the language, hemolele, which means perfect, perfect to be re-initiated into the human sphere, the psyche, the biopsychic field, all of that, and all the clairs, right? Clairvoyance, all the clairs, to be re-initiated back into our field so that we as a species can hala, because something that's very significant in the age of Aquarius and coming into a feminine shift is many people who are familiar with cosmology, planetary cosmology, is that Earth, Ki, Honua, Gaia, is considered a non-sacred planet, right? It's actually considered a non-sacred planet, which means it has not been accomplished, it is not complete. However, in the approach of Aquarius, our planet ringing from the iron crystal core, reverberations saying, I have now chosen to become a sacred planet. That means everything within her sphere must also become sacred. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So of course, the ferns would be releasing those spores at this time, saying it is time to feel, express, integrate the human emotion so that we can come into our sacredness.
That's extremely powerful. I'm just, I'm bowing to the ferns.
Yes,
And their mission. What a mission, you know, what a responsibility to take on and it to help in the evolution of Earth.
Yes, and because also the ferns must evolve and must exalt and become sacred as well. And perhaps we as humans who have become in patriarchy so arrogant, right? It's all about just the self, or maybe just the family, or just the community. Everyone else is disposable. That's not the way the rest of the world feels, right? I had this, Jocelyn, I had this experience where like that came on strong to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so repulsed. I'm repulsed, and something beautiful happened. I made my way into like this open field because I was like, oh my gosh. And this wind, I said, my cry was, How can you handle us? How can you stand us? We are impeding everything, right? It came so clear to me. This wind came and it pushed me back. I went like that. And my hand landed on a root that was in the shape of a hand. It was holding my hand.
Oh my goodness.
And the message I got in my nervous system was, if we wanted to, we would destroy you. But we have so much faith in you and we love you. Yeah.
Yeah. Full body chills.
Our allies, our cheerleaders, champions saying, forget linear. We're not looking at our clocks, our watches here. We love you. We're cheering you on. Yes, become sacred. You are sacred. Why don't you believe that? Yes, go through the experiences and the 4 elements for you to understand and believe in your sacredness. And then together, we will all exalt.
Yes, let's do that. Well, I just know that so many people listening are having that same reaction, like, yes, we know now is the time. We are feeling it so strongly from every angle, from the stars, from the earth, from the plants, from within our own hearts. And now is the time. Now is the time. And we're ready to really step into that. So thank you for sharing this wisdom to light up our path, help us find our way. And how can people work with the Fern medicines? I know you have beautiful webinars, maybe every month or so. You have really so many different ways to be involved. So I would love for you to share about that with everyone.
Mahalo, thank you. Yes, if you go to pohala.net, Pohala is spelled Pohala. There is several different things. One, I actually create, like you're saying in introduction, medicinals, hydrosols, oils, mists, teas, different things infused with the ferns so that they can help on this very fundamental biological level, start to recode the cells in the body, which is a beautiful way for us to begin to really feel the emotions once again. And I want to share this because oftentimes when I work with people, there is a little trepidation because it's like, oh my gosh, if I take the medicine, is it gonna like just implode my field? Remember that all medicines that are done in the correct way are first and foremost fair. They read fields. They know how to titrate in order so that we can acclimate in a way to where we are still functioning. The goal is not to blow the mind, right? The goal is not to dissociate. Yeah. The goal is to integrate so that it's most honest. So I do create and collaborate with the plants in such a way where I do make different biological medicines, which can be found on my website. I also do have monthly webinars, just as you stated, that covers an emotion every month. In January, we will be covering the fern Kalamoholauli'i, or innovation. We're going to have this conversation. What is innovation as the emotion? How is it going to be resourceful? How is it a service? And we also talk about how has this emotion harmed me in my misunderstanding, right? That's an important conversation to have as well. We need to be realistic about this. And I also, if you happen to be in Hawaii, on any of the islands, I am commonly doing in-person workshops, not just covering Pua, Ehu, Fern Medicine, but also Ulu, one of the things that you mentioned in the beginning, which is this beautiful breathing and movement, which stimulates our nervous system. This was also something that was taught to me from my kupuna, my grandmother, Kawiki Onolani, that spans all the way to Mahat. So yes, there are different resources in order to become familiar with the ferns.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for all that you offer. It is all just incredibly powerful. And so everybody, the link to pohala.net is just below this recording. So you can go there and check out all of these beautiful offerings. And Keone is sharing a gift with us as well, which is 15% discount on anything. Well, I'll let you speak to that, so I don't say anything wrong about it.
Yes. Yes, anything on the website store that you find that resonates with you, please use that code for 15% off. There is another link on the website called Medicine as a Ceremony, because I know a lot of people have questions about dosing. Dosing and plant medicine is best done on a sovereign way. Whenever people ask me, I'm like, that's kind of weird for me to tell you like how to take it. It's a conversation that is best had between yourself and the medicine. And I have a link on my website that sort of shares some support in how to cultivate that dialogue.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you so much for offering this, Keone, and everybody. The code is right there too, along with the link. So you'll see that right below this video. And I want to return to one thing you said there near the end, which was about the plants know where to meet us.
Yes.
And I've experienced that in so many different ways, whether it's with a tree or different medicines, or, like they know exactly what we need. It is so incredible. They're highly intelligent. And yeah, just to really to trust that if a plant is speaking to you and wants to work with you, and if one of these ferns is calling to you, really to trust that process.
Yes. Yes.
There's a reason for it.
Certainly. Well, and we as humans have that same ability to be so open and to be so fluent in the ways of nature and the organic, and especially with the trajectory of where humanity is moving, which is in transhumanism. I encourage our brothers and our sisters to feel deeply into your organic nature and begin to enliven that.
Beautiful. Yes. Wonderful advice. Thank you so much, Brother Keone. It is always such a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for all this powerful wisdom that you have shared, and for the ancient lineages that you are carrying and bringing forward to us at this time.
Mahalo. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much to everyone tuning in, and blessed be your journey of the 4 elements and your resurrection of safety. Aloha.